Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I, of course, am your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish podcast, Sarah Alapin, and I am the CEO of both Photos from the Hardy and District Bliss. Unfortunately, our Frenchy friend is downstairs taking a little naparoo, waiting for his dinner, aggressively sleeping. So he isn't joining us today, but he is snoring into his little mic downstairs, I'm sure. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Wedding Dish today. Today, we are dishing with someone I've worked with quite a few times and who I consider to be one of the most talented humans in her field. Joining me today on the Wedding Dish is a premier florist in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, the human behind Petal's Edge Floral and Event Design, Gerry Rodgers. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wedding Dish.
Hello. Nice to be here.
I am so excited. I just love working with you, and I'm very excited to hear all of the things about florals.
Well, flowers are definitely what we love.
You always do such a great job. Okay, well, let's get into it because I otherwise am just going to start talking about beautiful moments that I would like to reminisce about. Today, we are dishing about planning for your wedding florals. And I'm just really excited to talk to you about this because a lot of what you do is really like, it's almost like art installations. So, at least that's how I would classify it with my art background. So, but what do I know? Plan to make the most out of your investment in your florals? And what are some things that couples should anticipate when planning for their florals for their wedding?
It's interesting you asked that. I think that a lot of couples get overwhelmed when they start thinking about their wedding flowers. And part of that is just the process of talking about wedding flowers is a little bit more involved. It's a little different than booking other vendors where you're just like choosing how many hours, and people are frequently less familiar with flowers, whereas they might be more familiar with food. So it can be really foreign, but I find that a lot of couples after they meet with us frequently say, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And that, we have ways of breaking the process down so that they really can feel it in digestible portions. And then we can get all the information that we need out of them too. Flowers are great though, because it's really kind of the part of the wedding where your vision really starts to come out, I always suggest that people follow what they like. And in fact, one funny thing that happens frequently is that couples, when they meet with us in person, are often wearing their wedding colors. So if you don't know what colors to choose, look in your closet. What do you wear?
It's true because they should look good against your skin and your coloring.
Yeah. In fact, I fully predict that one day my daughter will have a purple wedding, without a doubt. But I think the other area where people really have trouble is that, and especially now, flower costs have really gone up a lot since the beginning of the pandemic. Certain flower growers have gone out of business. Some farms have been bought out by large corporations like grocery stores. So there's a little bit of a supply and demand issue. Plus there's been political upheaval in Ecuador, which contributes a lot of product to the flower market. These are all things most people don't realize when they think about getting flowers for their wedding. And so cost comes into play a lot. And I frequently guide people on what to think about with that. So for example, I often will say you want to invest. I think of flowers as an investment in your wedding, first of all. You want to invest in what will be in all your photos. So that's frequently things like bouquets and things like that. And where people spend the most time. So that's frequently the reception. It's easy to get bogged down by the perfect, cute little cocktail arrangement or, this amazing ceremony installation, which is no doubt beautiful, but might only be seen for 30 minutes or less. So if cost is an issue, I always say really think about where your time is and invest there. Similarly, I always say it's great to have a wow moment. Pick one wow moment. You don't need 12 wow moments. I mean, sure, if you can afford 12 wow moments, go for it. But pick one. Pick that one that is really meaningful to you and that is important. Maybe it is that ceremony backdrop. Maybe it's just your sweetheart table. Maybe it's a very lavish head table where everything else is more modest. Because at the end of the day, your guests are there to see you. This is not the DIY Olympics. This is not how well can you plan an event. I mean, sure, if you want to impress, that's great. And if it's in your budget to do so, that's fabulous. But I always like to help people prioritize what's important to them when it comes to wedding flowers.
I love that because that's true. You want to have like that one wow moment.
Right.
That I've never thought of it that way, but it is. It's like from the photography standpoint, it would be like the cover photo of your wedding.
Right.
That would be your floral wow moment, and prioritizing it based on where you are spending the most time is a really interesting idea in terms of cost savings and
Yeah.
things. Especially because I know that when things are in and out of season, which I don't actually know how that works with a lot of flowers coming from Central America, and I'm sure you can tell me that in 1 second. But my understanding is when you do things that are in season, it's more cost effective. Is that correct?
Not really. That's kind of a myth.
Okay,
Well, and especially in the DC area, because we're not a major flower growing region. And just look
true.
at our cost of living here. You think a farmer here is going to charge the same as a farmer in another country where the cost of living is less? The reality is that flowers are a global industry because it helps with cost. And so it's a sad reality that it might be cheaper to grow your flowers in another country and buy them a plane ticket than to grow them here. Now that parlance probably was relevant if you're like in California, which is a major flower growing state and a
That's
growing
where I
state.
got married. So
Exactly. And so if it's the difference between trucking it from somewhere on the coast of California or flying it in from Holland, sure, no brainer. It's going to be less expensive to pick something seasonal. But seasonality doesn't actually reflect cost, especially here. It just reflects availability. So peonies, for example, the flower has a 9-day bloom cycle. So the entire time that peonies are in season, you're basically chasing where they are available and blooming in order to use them for an event. And once that's over, that's over. So it's supply and demand. You're not going to get it all the time. Now, in recent years, there have been a lot of peony growers that have emerged in Alaska. So the peony growing season has changed a little bit. But you might imagine shipping your peonies in from Alaska, not necessarily the cheapest option either. So, availability doesn't always mean cost. It does, though, relate to quality. So, locally grown flowers are frequently better quality because they aren't being trucked and flown from large distances. They aren't getting that wear and tear. At the end of the day, flowers have a short lifespan. You can't freeze them and, use them 2 weeks from now, the way you
yeah.
might a steak. It's now or never.
So I have a question because you
Yeah.
just sparked something in me. Um, I remember when we did Danielle and Addie's wedding together,
Mhm.
and you were doing the cherry blossoms on the huppah. Because of course, in this area, cherry blossoms are such a staple in the DC area. Like we love them here. I happen to be allergic to them, but
I joke that cherry blossoms are one of our seasons. They're spring, summer, fall, and cherry blossoms.
yes, that's true. That's true.
Well, winter
And
too.
I think did you was there like concern that they were at the very end of cherry blossom season at that wedding? Do you remember? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm
They
asking
were.
2017. Was this 2017? I'm asking this question and expecting Gerry to remember, but here she goes.
So I generally only promise cherry for the month of April, sometimes the last week in March, because it has such a short season in general. And, once you get past a certain point, you just don't even have them at all. But yeah, they had cherry blossoms and they had cherry blossoms in their arch. But because they had cherry blossoms in the arch, I also always say we need other flowers in this arch as well, so that because the thing is, cherry blossoms on your arch don't look like the cherry blossoms at the tidal basin where the tree is in full flower and you've got trees behind it and the whole mass effect. Like each branch is only going to have a small number of blooms on it. So, you want things to help fill it out to give that true cherry blossom effect. And, they fall off all the time.
Yeah, they're so delicate. I that At that wedding, it had a torrential downpour right before the ceremony started, and Gerry looked up at the sky, saw that the rain clouds were coming in. I was heading up, it was at the Omni showroom. So I was heading up to the suite to photograph from above, and she's like, "I think it's going to rain." I get up to the suite. Gerry is standing underneath with her arms out, supporting a tarp to keep the rain off of these cherry blossoms because they never would have made it through that store.
Yeah, that definitely happens for sure.
I love it. Okay, so what are some tips for couples who really want to create a truly captivating and memorable wedding experience that you have?
Like I said, it goes back to that wow moment. Personalizing it, really following your own bliss. I mean, sometimes couples will say, "Well, I don't really know what I want to do," and I always say, just follow what you like. That's the best guidance. Don't worry about trends. Follow what you like, and then the wedding will ultimately be personal, memorable, and meaningful, which is really what you want at the end of the day. It's not about competing with what the Joneses are doing, so to speak. But yeah, like I said, that well moment, like really, really doing what makes the most sense to you. It's
Yeah,
always nice to like greet people with, a beautiful arrangement here and there, to use the flowers as a visual cue. Most people are maneuvering like a hotel or some venue for the first time. So having things in a cohesive scheme also makes everything go further. Giving people breadcrumbs of, oh, you're in the right place here. Oh, you're supposed to go over there. Here's another, floral clue, if you will.
that's so smart because if it is a giant venue, there have been times when I've attended weddings and I'm like, am I going the right way? And you start going down the hallway and like the lights come on, and then you're like, I'm definitely not going the right way. If there were flowers, I would know.
Yeah. And if they're the same flowers in the same color palette, then cohesiveness is one of those ways that any design that you do goes further, because then like I said, you've got those visual cues. It reminds me of when you're like analyzing a written piece in high school and they're like, what is the motif? That's what the flowers are. They're your motif that carries through, that you follow and that you see over and over again throughout the event.
That's so smart. This is why you're the best, Gerry. How do you know that the person you're booking, how do you know you can trust them with that vision and to carry that motif through? And what are some of the things couples should look for when booking a florist?
Along those lines, I mean, I think different people are looking for different kinds of florists. First of all, I mean, some people want someone that will tell them what to do. I think for us, we really like to listen. We like to listen to what our couples like, dislike, and really kind of weave together a design based on what they're sharing with us. I think one of my very first reviews when I was first starting from a client said that what she liked the most was that she felt heard. And that's what we're always looking for couples to feel from that experience, is to feel heard. But I think just as there are different kinds of people who seek out different kinds of partnerships and friendships, like that can be a different answer for different people. But yeah, like you should be able to look back and say, yes, I felt comfortable with that person. I felt heard by them, or they provided what I needed.
Yeah. And maybe they were excited about a challenge too. Like that's one of the things I love when we work together is there's always some like big like challenge that the couple has and then you execute it flawlessly. And for me as the photographer, it's like the best because it gives me so many opportunities for beautiful photos.
For sure. For sure.
Okay, final question. What questions do you wish clients would ask during your initial consultation?
It's not so much a question that I wish they would ask, but I think that with the pandemic, we've gone in a different direction with meetings, such that more people are seeking out Zoom meetings. And I I feel like something is missing. And I kind of can't wait till people kind of go back to the way things were in a way, because the process of talking with a florist and talking about flowers can be really tactile and visual. Like we frequently have, flower books that people look through of the different flowers that come in different colors. We have an extensive portfolio. I looked recently and we had 48,000 pictures of past weddings we've done. I cannot show someone any of that in a Zoom meeting. I mean, first of all, sometimes the technology just fails you. But there is this interactive component of flowers that is different than perhaps any other wedding vendor. Because most people aren't familiar with flowers. And even if you have someone that's like, oh, I was a gardener, well, garden flowers aren't necessarily the same as the cut flower trade. So it can be a bit different. So yeah, it's less like what they would ask, but more that I wish people would start coming in person, because I think there's an essential part of the process that they're missing by sticking with Zoom calls and things like that.
Yeah, looking back at my wedding, if I had not met with our florist in person, and that of course meant traveling to California, um, if I had not met with them in person, I would have probably made so many different decisions because I didn't know anything. And when I
Yeah,
went in, she like walked us through the process of how to choose, and she had to define a lot of flowers for me. Like, I
right.
didn't know what a spit rose was. I don't even know if I'm saying the right word. Is that the right word?
I'm not familiar with it off the bat. No.
It's like a teeny tiny rose that
Okay.
like they put in corsages a lot.
Spray rose. Yes.
Yes. I would have never known what that was. And I
Right.
don't think the size of it would have conveyed because, like,
Right.
I knew I didn't want my mom to have something big that was, she's very particular with her jewelry. And I
Right.
knew it had to be a certain weight. Like, it couldn't be heavy enough that she was going to end up feeling like it was moving or like distracting her or something. And she'd be
Right.
futzing with it the whole time. And I didn't want that. So going in, I was able to feel the weight of it. I was able to see that it would be something she was comfortable with. And also same with bouquet. No, every wedding I go to, if there is someone that has a bouquet, they consistently tell me they are surprised at how heavy it is.
Oh yeah. Water weighs a lot.
Yes. And you can't really convey that in like a Zoom call. So I can't
Oh.
imagine not having gone in and held a bouquet and been like, "Oh, okay. So now I'm prepared for this mentally and emotionally that this is going to be the thing I'm carrying around and I won't be pushing it up toward my neck the whole time or my chin the whole time," which is what happens because it's heavy. So then people pull it up toward, in front of your boobs and you really want it in front of the belly button.
Although I had a bride once who actually had us put fishing weights in her bouquet so that her bouquet would be heavier and her arms would be straining so that they would look better in pictures. So, you
Huh.
never know.
That's interesting. That is what a creative way to tackle that. Yeah, I went in thinking I wanted calla lilies, like just a few of them, and I came out with like a completely different like artistic look that was yeah, I would have just gone with that and never revisited the idea of anything else. So I agree. I think there's a lot of value in going in person and seeing how delicate something is because if you tell me it's delicate, I don't really know what that means. Like, is it hydrangeas that are super delicate also?
Well, it depends on what you mean by delicate. They are water hogs, so they really need a lot of water. They don't like to be out of water for very long, for sure. So in that sense, yeah, they're delicate. I wouldn't use one in a bouquet, for example.
Yeah, and I think I wanted one. Like I asked about that. That was one of my questions, and she's like, "I would never do that." And I think she said delicate. I didn't. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, this is all for me is like still a learning curve because while I work with flowers, looking at them, it's very different than what you do from
I
my
think the
standpoint.
hardest I think the hardest thing to convey is scale because people don't read photographs very well. And I've had people see something in a photograph that they thought was very big, but in reality was very small, or something that was very small that, they saw as very big. Like they just don't read scale in a photograph very well. Whereas in person, we can actually use your hands to show how big something is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot that's not read well.
yeah, and there's lens distortion from my side. Where depending on where it is in the frame, it's going to look like a different size against the body unless
Yeah.
I compensate for the distortion in editing, which I will only do if it's flattering. If it's
Color is
flattering
the
the
big thing too. I mean, as we know, phones, computers, they don't show color true to life at all.
no.
And that's a constant battle for florists for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The phone camera is the least flattering camera. That is why everyone has been personally victimized by the front-facing camera at some point. Oh my gosh. Well, Gerry, thank you so much for joining me on the wedding dish today. I just adore you. I love working with you. And I'm so glad I'm coming away from this with so much more knowledge about flowers as well. So thank you for sharing your expertise here today with us.
My pleasure.
Um, where can our listeners find you online?
You can find us on our website, which is petalsedge.com, and we frequently share information on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is petalsedgedc. Those are probably the two best places to find us.
I love it. I love it. And while you are finding Gerry, you can find us at theweddingdishpodcast.com, and we'll have show notes there, which has even some more info about Gerry than what we shared on this episode, as well as about Petal's Edge than what we shared on this episode. Fun facts and all kinds of good stuff and pictures and things. And you can apply to be a guest, all kinds of good stuff. So you can find us there, and also at the Wedding Dish Podcast on Instagram. Don't forget to tune in next week. We have another super cool guest coming, and give us a follow, rate, and review on your preferred podcasting app. Gerry, thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun.
So much fun. Yes.
Have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Cheers.